Welcome to Formosa Dream Chasers.
We're your hosts, Mary Anne
and Ching-en.
Please join us as we explore the journeys amazing people take in pursuit of their dreams.
And get insights from their experiences.
Let's hit the road.
And get started.
Hello, and welcome to Formosa Dream Chasers. With me, your host, Mary Anne Sioco. For those tuning in for the first time, this is a show about ordinary folks who have stepped out of their comfort zones and have taken a chance on themselves, on their passions, and on their dreams. We sit down with people from all walks of life, and we talk about what it really takes to build something meaningful, whether it's here in Taiwan or elsewhere. Today's episode, though, is going to be a little different. There's no guest, no interview, just me, myself, and I. The reason I wanted to do this particular episode is because most of the time, in the middle of chasing something bigger, we don't always stop to talk about what that actually feels like. And lately, I've been thinking about that a lot. It just so happens that we're celebrating Labor Day this weekend, so I've been reflecting quite a bit on the nature of work. Specifically, how we spend most of our lives working, how that ties into what we want to achieve in life, and of course, what our dreams are, and what they look like in real life. Not the highlight reel, not the success story at the end, but the part we're usually in right now. I feel like when we're younger, it seems a lot easier to talk about chasing our dreams. We imagine something exciting, and we're more willing to take risks, build something, and go after what we want. And I definitely remember feeling that drive and motivation whenever I started something new, especially when it aligned with what I wanted at the time. But there's also another side to chasing our dreams that doesn't get talked about as much. The part where it feels heavy, where instead of feeling inspired, you just feel completely exhausted. And it's the part where the thing you chose, the thing you wanted, starts to feel more like pressure, like something you have to keep up with. And it's a weird feeling, right? Because on one hand, this is what you wanted. This is what you told everyone, that this is your dream. But on the other hand, as you're going through it, it doesn't always feel the way you thought it would. There are days when showing up feels easy, but there are also days when even the smallest task feels like a lot. And I think that's the part people don't always share. That chasing a dream isn't just passion and excitement. Sometimes it's consistency when you don't feel like it. Sometimes it's pushing through when you're really low on energy. And sometimes it's just doing what you can for that day. We all have those days when everything just isn't working out. No matter what you do or how hard you try, and it really feels like the world is against you. So the fact that you didn't throw in the towel and quit, that alone is an achievement in itself. Here's the thing I've been realizing lately. Not every win looks like a big moment. In fact, most of them don't. Sometimes a win is just finishing something you didn't feel like doing. Sometimes it's showing up when you're tired. And most of all, not quitting is a win that we often don't give ourselves enough credit for. These things are easy to overlook because they don't feel impressive. They don't feel like progress. But they are. They really are. I think we're so used to measuring progress in big milestones that we forget how much is happening in the background. When I talk about things happening, I'm not just referring to the effort, the repetition, or the small steps we take individually. I'm also talking about dealing with questions, doubt, or even judgment from family and friends who may not believe in the same things as you, who do not see your vision and do not understand what you want to do. Having to navigate that lack of support can be really difficult as well. These things don't stand out, but they do add up. And if you've been showing up, even imperfectly, then you're probably doing better than you think. It might not feel like it at the moment, but we really should give ourselves space and credit for the efforts that we are making, despite all of the difficulties and challenges that we may be going through at the time. And that brings me to something else, this idea or feeling of being quote-unquote behind. I know a lot of people feel that, and it always seems like everyone else is moving forward, doing more, and achieving more compared to where you are. But what we don't always see is everything that they went through that led them there. We don't see the slow parts, the uncertain parts, or the moments where they probably felt stuck as well. And when we only see the outcome, of course it's going to feel like you're behind. But it's good to remember that you're not starting from zero anymore. You've already built a foundation. You've learned things, gained experience, and figured out things along the way. Even if it doesn't feel like it yet, you are moving forward, and that's already a step closer than where you were before. This is especially true with social media constantly highlighting how good things are, making it so easy to compare your journey to someone else's. And it's not just social media. Sometimes the comparison comes from those in your closest circles. For example, if you come from an Asian family, you probably know that during big family gatherings, there's always a focus on achievements. That's one of the common things that you will be asked about by all the aunties, by all the uncles, as they're trying to catch up with what you've been doing from the last time that they saw you. So in the midst of all this, it's easy to forget that you are moving forward when you're right in the middle of your own journey. And I also want to add something here because I think this is a part of the journey that can be really frustrating. When you're pursuing your dreams, when you're in the middle of your journey, you might have an idea of what your timeline should be. You might think, by this age, I should be here, or by this time, I should have achieved this. But the reality is, sometimes life has its own timeline, and more often than not, it won't fit your idea of how things are supposed to go. And that can be really hard to accept. For me, this really hits close to home because I went against my parents' wishes and expectations when I decided to pursue a degree in communications, because that was and still is where my interest lies. But coming from a traditional Chinese family, my parents had a very different idea of what was the best for me. They didn't believe a communications degree would help me in my future, and they were very adamant about me pursuing further studies in medicine or business. Cliche, I know, but that was still the reality. And because of this, my parents and I had a lot of very long and very painful arguments. And in the end, my parents gave in because I told them they would be wasting their money if I studied what they wanted, simply because I wouldn't be able to give it 100%. And it would also be a lot more difficult for me to really immerse myself in whatever it is I'm studying at the time, because my interest just isn't there. And of course, you can imagine how unhappy they were about that. But, thankfully, they agreed in the end. Fast forward to a few months after graduation, I was having a really hard time finding a good paying job related to my degree. And naturally, I heard a lot of "I told you so's" from my parents. And it was honestly very difficult to deal with because, on one hand, you want to respect your parents' wishes. But on the other hand, I also wanted to do what felt right for me. So I found myself stuck in that in-between space. But because I couldn't find, a good opportunity back in Manila, I started looking into improving my Mandarin, and that's what led me to come to Taiwan for language studies. And later on, I decided to stay in Taiwan and work here. So at the beginning, the work I did had nothing to do with my degree. I was teaching English for a while, and later I was able to land a marketing position with a telecom company. I also worked in PR briefly, before eventually coming here to Radio Taiwan International. So, if I look back on it now, my path to pursuing my dream job wasn't straightforward at all. It didn't follow any kind of timeline that I had envisioned, because from the time I graduated to the time I was able to land work here at RTI, a good 10-15 years has passed. And although you can say that marketing and PR is still part of communications, it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do either. So, the timeline of where I started and where I wanted to be was not something that I could have planned in any shape or form. But despite all that, I can honestly say that I'm happy with where I am now and with what I'm doing. And I think that's the point. Sometimes the path doesn't make sense while you're in it, and it can be really frustrating. And, there are a lot of lows that come with it. But that doesn't mean it's not leading you somewhere. And that doesn't mean that the time was wasted, because everything that happens, you can always find something of value that you can take and bring with you as you venture forward to the next step. And there's another part of the journey that I think we don't talk about enough when we're pursuing our dreams. It's the in-between moments, because when we think about our goals, we tend to focus so much on the end result, on where we want to go and what we want to be able to achieve. But what we don't always notice is everything that happens along the way. All the small, unplanned moments that don't seem important at first, the ones we don't plan for, don't expect, and sometimes don't even realize are happening. And yet it's these little moments that quietly shape our entire experience. Moments that weren't part of the plan, but somehow become meaningful anyway. Maybe it's a conversation with someone who shifts your perspective. Or maybe it's trying something new that you never thought you would enjoy. Or maybe it's something even simpler. A quiet moment at the end of a long day where you sit back and realize, okay, I made it through today. And for a second, that feels like enough. I think we often underestimate these moments because they don't look like progress. They don't look like achievement. They don't look like the dream we originally had in mind. But they're part of it. They're part of what makes the journey feel real. And sometimes they're actually the best part. Because when you look back, it's not always the big milestones that stand out the most. It's a feeling of being in those little moments. The laughter, the struggle, the unexpected turns. It's the little things that gave the experience meaning. And I think that's something I've come to appreciate more over time. That not everything has to be big or life-changing to matter. Sometimes just being present in what you're doing is already enough. And sometimes the fact that you showed up, experienced something new, or even just got through the day, that in itself is meaningful. And I personally think that this is something we don't remind ourselves of often enough. Because we're so focused on getting there, quote unquote, that we forget to notice what's already happening over here. And when you start paying attention to those moments, you begin to realize something important. Your life isn't just made up of big achievements. It's made up of all these small, meaningful experiences along the way. And I think that's really what all of this comes down to. Because when we talk about dreams, we often focus on the milestones, the outcomes, the arrival points. But the more I think about it, the more I realize it's never really just about getting there. It's about everything that happens in between. And maybe that's why the journey never feels the way we expect it to. Because it's not just leading us somewhere, it's shaping us while we're on the way. So when I step back and look at everything we've talked about today, it brings me back to this one thought. Chasing a dream is not a straight line. It's not something that unfolds neatly or according to the timeline we imagine for ourselves. And I think that can be one of the hardest things to accept. Because we all start with an idea of how things should go. We have a picture in our minds of where we should be, when we should get there, and what it's supposed to look like once we do. But life rarely follows that picture exactly. But when you look closer, something is still being built. You're still learning, still adjusting, and still becoming. And maybe that's the part we overlook the most. That progress doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always feel exciting or clear. Sometimes it just looks like showing up again, trying again, continuing even when you're not sure where it's all going yet. And I think that's what makes this journey so human, because it's not just about reaching a destination. It's about everything that changes in you while you're on your way there. So if you're listening to this and you feel like you're not where you should be yet, maybe the better question isn't whether you're there yet. Maybe it's whether you're still moving, still trying, still showing up in your own way. Because sometimes that's what progress actually looks like. And maybe the dream was never just about the outcome. Maybe it was also about the version of you that gets shaped along the way. And maybe that's exactly where you're supposed to be. As Henry Miller once said, one's destination is never a place, but a new way of seeing things. Thanks for listening to Formosa Dream Chasers. I'll see you next time.